18, verse 74. Sanjaya Vacha iti aham vasudevasya patascha mahatmanama samvadamimam ashrosham adbhutam romahashanam. Sanjaya Vacha, Sanjaya said, iti, thus, aham, I, Vasudevasya of Krishna, Parthasya and Arjuna, cha, also, Mahatmanaha of the Great Soul, Samvadam, discussion, Imam, this, Ashrosham, have heard, Adbhutam, wonderful, Ramahashanam, making the hair stand on end. Translation. Sanjaya said, thus have I heard the conversation of the two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, His Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra inquired from his secretary Sanjay, what happened on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? The entire study was related to the heart of Sanjaya by the grace of his spiritual master Vyasa. He thus explained the theme of the battlefield. The conversation was wonderful because such an important conversation between two great souls had never taken place before and will not take place again. It was wonderful because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was speaking about himself and his energies to the living entity. Arjuna, a great devotee of the Lord, if we follow in the footsteps of Arjuna to understand Krishna, then our life will be happy and successful. Sanjaya realized this, and as he began to understand it, he related the conversation to Dhritarashtra. Now it is concluded that wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there is victory. So the translation once again. Sanjaya said, thus have I heard the conversation of the two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. So I quickly recite the invocation prayers. By all means, recite at home as well, the prayers. Om Gyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shiguru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shivashikamatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopishwara Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha namo vishnu padaya krishna prashtaya bhutale shrimate bhakti charu swami iti namine namo vishnu padaya krishna prashtaya bhutale shrimate bhakti vedanta swami iti namine namaste saraswati devi gauravani pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasya Desataride Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for inviting me for this chapter a day, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 74. Please accept my humble obeisances. Please also pray for your blessings so I may speak something which is enlightening to all the participants here. So the translation once again was Sanjay said, thus I have heard the conversation of the two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. So on this particular verse, I'm just going to break it up into five sections. The first section is the importance of the spiritual master and who is the spiritual master. Second one is the conversation between the great souls, Krishna and Arjuna. Thirdly is what is so important about following these instructions that Krishna gave to Arjuna. What does it mean to us, and what does it mean to all of us in our lives when we read the Bhagavad Gita? Uh, the final or the fourth part of it is going to be Krishna and Arjuna. What were the rewards in the actual recitation of the Bhagavad Gita? As we understand in the last verse, it's all about victory, extraordinary power, morality, and opulence. And then finally, some of the symptoms of becoming a devotee of Krishna. On this particular verse, it mentions about the Sanjaya whose hair was standing on end. What is causing that symptom? Yeah, if I could ask everybody to be on mute as well. So first of all, the first section is the importance of the spiritual master. Who is the spiritual master, and why is it so important? Just to recap, we come into the end of the Bhagavad Gita chapter 18. This is the summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita itself. We understand that the whole Bhagavad Gita took place during the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Krishna was reciting the verses, 700 verses to Arjuna, the Son of God. But that was the diamond, the crest, jewel of the Mahabharata itself. The Mahabharata was a great war that took place between the righteous warriors, the Pandavas, who Krishna was protected, and also the envious cousins, who were the Kauravas, led by their blind king, Dhritarashtra. The Mahabharata itself was about 18,000 verses, but of those 18,000 verses, 700 verses were specifically for the Bhagavad Gita itself. So during that time, it explains about the importance about Arjuna surrendering unto Krishna himself. When he sees his own cousins on the battlefield, he's confused. Krishna, I'm so confused. All this time I was ready to fight to win this war, but what is the point of winning this war when I'm fighting great heroes who are like my fathers, my grandfathers, like Bhishma Dev and Drona, Acharya, great great warriors who are his own cousins, uh, Duryodhan and all the other cousins within the army that he was fighting. But according to Krishna, Krishna explained in all the chapters of the Bhagavad Gita about the importance about fighting for dharma, fighting for righteousness. It was Arjuna's duty as a Kshatriya to uphold dharma itself. So one of the verses that uh, Arjuna had said to Krishna at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Sorry, I've lost that page. Sorry, 1 minute. Stop closing. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing a minute and share again. Sorry. Okay, just want to check. Can you see all that?
Yes, Prabhu can see.
Okay, sure. So this was the verse which Arjuna had said to Krishna. I won't read the Sanskrit, I'll read the translation. So this is from chapter 2, verse 7. Arjuna says to Krishna, now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So the first important thing of anybody in our spiritual life is to actually be surrendered to an authorized spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master. And how do we know a bona fide spiritual master? Because we understand by reading the Bhagavad Gita, if the spiritual master is given the same instructions as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We know he's a bona fide spiritual master. He's not concocting anything for himself. He's not asking for any personal sort of, I suppose, remuneration or looking for disciples. He's actually just ready to serve anybody who is willing to serve Krishna or give the knowledge of Krishna himself. So in the chapter 4, verse 34, the Krishna says to Arjuna, Tadvidi pranipatena paripashena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshana. The most important stage of a disciple is to first to just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So in this case, Sanjaya, he has got the vision to see what is taking place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. By serving his spiritual master Vyasadeva, Vyasadeva being pleased, gave him the ability to visualize everything without being present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he was able to relay exactly what was going on, all the instructions, the words that was discussed between Arjuna and Krishna to his king Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was blind, unfortunately, and he was not able to fight during the war of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So Sanjay was revealing everything to him. And that is very important because Sanjay was actually a disciple of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is also known as a literal incarnation of Krishna. He is an expansion of Krishna. And Vyasadeva also had a spiritual master. His spiritual master was Narada Muni. And Narada Muni, of course, he had a spiritual master who was Lord Brahma, who's the first living entity. Lord Brahma took his instructions from Lord Vishnu. So it just shows you that disciplic succession has to be followed through an authorized succession. And so similarly in spiritual life, when we actually surrender to Krishna, we can surrender to Krishna directly, that's fine. But to actually have the revelation of Krishna's mercy, we have to surrender to a spiritual master. So when we recite the prayers every morning, the Gravashtikam prayers, we recite on the seventh verse, Shaksha Dridvena Samashta Shastra Uktastata Bhavyate Vasadip Kitu Prabhu Ya Priya Ivatasya Vande Guroshi Charanarvindam. The spiritual master is considered to be a bona fide spiritual master because he is a confidential servitor of the Lord. This is revealed and acknowledged by all the authorities, by the scriptures, and is approved by all the authorities. So a spiritual master is not an ordinary person because the confidential knowledge, the king of knowledge is very confidential. He wouldn't reveal it to somebody who is demonic by nature or is envious of Krishna or does not have any interest in devotional service at all. His prime duty is to only share that knowledge to those who are fully surrendered to Krishna. And by surrendering unto Krishna, the spiritual master becomes to be known as good as God. He's not God himself, but he has the qualities of God's nature by revealing all the beautiful pastimes, the glory, the name, the pastimes of Krishna himself. So the final verse on that Gaurashtakam prayers, verse 8, Yasha Prashada, Bhagavat Prashada, Yasha Prashada Nagati Katopi. By the mercy of the spiritual master, we receive the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any spiritual advancement. So you can see the importance of the spiritual master, just like uh, Arjuna accepted Krishna as his spiritual master, and Krishna gave him instructions as a spiritual master. Even though Arjuna thought of Krishna as a friend, he tells in one of the verses, "Oh Krishna, you are the supreme personality of Godhead. I please excuse my ignorance. I jested with you, I laughed with you, I shared the same bed with you, as I shared the same plate of prasadam with you. Little did I know that you are the supreme personality of Godhead." But of course, Krishna is so merciful that He doesn't want to become a spiritual master. He doesn't want to even become the Supreme Lord. To his disciples, to those who are very surrendered unto him, he wants to become their dearmost friend. And that is what our aim is in our spiritual life. Although we can approach Krishna in many ways, we can have Krishna as our spiritual father, we can have him as spiritual parents, we can have him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can pray to him, or we can be neutral in our devotion to Krishna, like Narada Muni, or we can have him as our best friend. You know, we can pray to Krishna, but in order to do that, first of all, we have to be completely surrendered in our desire to serve Krishna. Why do we approach a spiritual master? In our spiritual life, in our journey, we are always confused. We're always perplexed. We always want to know what is right and what is wrong. So the next part of our spiritual life is also understanding that conversation that we have our spiritual master. We have to understand why is it so important to have conversations with our spiritual master, because the spiritual master will reveal that truthful knowledge unto you, as we mentioned earlier on. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. When we see Krishna and Arjuna, we also see them as Nara and Narayan. They were great rishis. When we do the invocation prayers for the Srimad Bhagavatam, Nara Narayan Namaskritam Naram Jiva Narutanam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiryat. First of all, we offer our prayers to Nara and Narayan, the great rishis. We offer our prayers to Vyasadeva. We offer our prayers to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. Why do we do that? Because we want that intelligence so that we can actually be absorbed in Krishna Katha. Sometimes you can become envious of Krishna and not actually have that desire to be fully surrendered to Krishna, but you could become more blasphemous, more offensive by reading the scriptures, by always doubting the scriptures. It is said that the scriptures itself sometimes can be very ambiguous. It is very difficult to understand because we have this limited material intelligence. When you think about the whole universe, which is like a tiny speck of dust particle compared to the whole universe itself. So, how do we understand Krishna who has created this entire universe? So, therefore, we've got to have faith. Without faith, Shraddha, it is very difficult to actually understand Krishna consciousness. But sometimes we don't even have to have faith. We just got to have shows of love, symptoms of love. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was actually discussing about the Bhagavad Gita, there was a person who was actually, how would you say, um, well, he wasn't completely intelligent. He was slightly invalid, but yet he had symptoms, tears of symptoms of devotion in his eyes. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you said you're illiterate, you cannot even read, but yet you hold the Bhagavad Gita. So why are you crying? And that particular person said, yes, I am illiterate. I cannot understand. I cannot read. I do not understand anything about real devotion. But when I see this picture of Krishna, the chariot driver, he's carrying the chariot for Arjuna. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet he has taken up the duty as a servant to Arjuna, who's subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what makes me cry. So Lord Chaitanya was very much amazed. Of course, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he understands everything past, present, and future. But because he was played the role of the disciple of the Supreme Lord, he could actually show to the world that sometimes it's not always Shraddha, sometimes it's not always devotion, but understanding that little bit of intelligence to understand who Krishna is as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it is very important that because sometimes in our life, there's so much perplexities in our life, so much difficulties that we're always facing. And we have to understand that how do we know, how do we approach a bona fide spiritual master? And the way to approach a bona fide spiritual master is to see somebody who could reveal to you that devotion to Krishna. Unfortunately, when you go or see anywhere nowadays, there's so many devotees, so many religions, so many different faiths. But once you actually understand or want to become completely devoted to Krishna, the secret of devotion is to find a bona fide spiritual master, not somebody who's willing to take money off you, not somebody who's willing to give you some cheap mantras to actually say, just follow this mantra, you will become God, or you will become completely fully surrendered. No, it's a long, long process. Even devotees or spiritual leaders who become devotees for many, many years, they still think to themselves, oh my gosh, I do not even have an ounce of devotion to Krishna. And they pray constantly, please Krishna, protect me from Maya. Please Krishna, protect me from all the material activities around the world so I do not fall down. Prabhupada used to tell his devotees, please do not take it, blindly. Do not let your guards down. You need to keep praying to Krishna for Maya not to attack you. And you can see, Srila Prabhupada, I believe he initiated some 10,000 disciples in the space of 11 years. But within those 10,000 disciples, probably we'll say 500 devotees who are still within the Hare Krishna movement. So it just shows you, even though you may have fully surrendered to Krishna, you may have taken Diksha, first initiation, and Brahmin initiation. The spiritual master's duty is to take you back home, back to Godhead, but it's also your duty as a disciple to work yourself home, back to Godhead, and to be completely surrendered to your spiritual master in order to please Krishna. So you can actually see that it's a two-way commitment, and the commitment is bigger for the spiritual master. And why is that? Because the spiritual master is taking on the karma of his disciple. That's why sometimes when you see a spiritual leader, he suffers tremendously, especially after initiation, because he's taken the burden of the spiritual master. Anything that you do is actually the burden comes to the spiritual master. So it is so important that we don't make offenses. And a good example of that is Lord Indradev. He was so powerful. He had so much opulence. He became very proud of his opulence. When everybody came to pray for him, give him presents of gifts of valuable jewels and so many opulences, Lord Indra became so proud that when he was sitting on the throne, his own spiritual master came to see him, Shukracharya, but he ignored him completely. Shukracharya, because he was completely renounced and he was completely intelligent, surrendered to Krishna, he could have cursed Indradev to fall down, but he did not. He just left the audience of Indra and all the demigods who had come to a huge ceremony to honor Lord Indra to show that they were subordinate to Lord Indra. So then all of a sudden, Lord Indradev, he felt very, very disheartened. All of a sudden, he understood what he did. He made a great offense. And as a result, the demons, they become very powerful and they were praying to their own spiritual master, Brihaspati. They learned the importance about the spiritual master. So while they were praying for Brihaspati, they became powerful. And due to that powerful nature of the demons, they attacked the demigods. The demigods were attacked so heavily, they were very taken away from their thrones. Uh, Indra Dev, he actually had to leave his throne and had to run to Lord Brahma to ask for guidance, for protection, pray to Lord Brahma, please tell me what should I do, what should I do? And then Lord Brahma was advised that he should pray to another spiritual master. Just from the top of my head, I've forgotten the names, please forgive me. Uh, I just read it quite recently. So anyway, but this spiritual master happened to be the spiritual master for the demigods as well. Although um, uh, Brihaspati was there, but there was another spiritual master. This spiritual master had three heads. Then what had happened, Indradev, he realized that this spiritual master was also offering or was offering oblations to the demigods, to the demons, and the demons became very powerful. And the Indradev, he actually chopped the three heads of this particular spiritual master, his own spiritual master, that he had taken surrender and shelter to. And that spiritual master, the three heads which fallen on their head, the sinful reaction that Indradev had, although he was pure by nature, he still had to suffer to a certain degree of the sinful reaction by killing a Brahmana. But Indradev, what did he do? He passed that burden onto the human beings. Part of it, or third of it, or quarter of it, beg your pardon, was passed on to the women because they had to suffer a certain periodical stage, every monthly stages, the menstrual period. He also, part of that sinful reaction, he passed to Mother Earth in the terms of vast lands was turned into deserts. Another stage of sinful reaction was passed on to all the trees and vegetations where they lost all their leaves and the growth during the winter period itself. So unfortunately, it just shows you by committing offenses to a spiritual master, there is a sinful reaction as well. But by pleasing the spiritual master, you become very powerful and you become very uh, uh, happy in your own spiritual endeavor itself. Um, Now, the third point was important was to follow instructions. As we mentioned that the Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses, it's all full of instructions. Lord Krishna's given instructions about surrender to Krishna, talking about different yoga systems. First of all, he's talking about karma yoga, jnana yoga, sangha yoga, and eventually it comes to bhakti yoga. It explains that the path of bhakti, devotional service, one actually comes to spiritual life itself. One can understand me as I am only by devotional service. When one is fully surrendered unto me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So you could have demigod worship, but those who worship demigods could go to the planets of the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the planets of the ancestors. Those who worship hobs and goblins go to the planets of the ghosts and hobgoblins. And it tells you in the different stages in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. By worshipping in these three different modes, you have different results based on those three devotions of ignorance, passion, and goodness, passion, and ignorance. So the important thing about instructions, it's just like when you have a teacher, when you become a student, you listen to your teacher to give you instructions. What is it that the teacher is telling you? You don't become a doctor just by somebody's giving you a certification. So similarly, a guru or a disciple doesn't take instructions just whimsically. He follows all the instructions as revealed in the scriptures by the Vedas, by the Bhagavad Gita, by the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Upanishads. And these are not ordinary books. They have come directly from the disciplic succession, originated from Lord Vishnu himself. When the verse, the supreme science was thus delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He instructed Vivashwan, the sun god. Vivashwan instructed Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu instructed Ikshvaku. In this way, the saintly kings understood the spiritual science. The important thing is also within these instructions, there's so many do's and don'ts. Um, when we come to Krishna consciousness, you think, well, I can't understand Krishna consciousness. There's so many activities. Why do we have to follow these four regulative principles? Why do we have to be so clean? Why do we have to do this and not do this? Ultimately, they're for your own purification. When you become Krishna conscious, you also learn how to become spiritually minded. And to do that, you have to follow the footsteps. Just like when we become a citizens of the particular country, we follow the rules and government laws of that particular country. If we did not follow the rules and laws, then there would be chaos. There'd be outlaw everywhere around the world, there'd be criminal activities going on. Just like when we drive a car, if we don't follow the rules of the highway code, then we'll end up having accidents. We'll end up going in different directions or do whatever we please. And of course, you have to have a system of I suppose, law-abiding citizens. If we don't do that, then unfortunately the country goes into chaotic situation. So within the olden days, there were different ways of actually receiving these instructions. There was Smriti and there was Shruti. In the olden days, because of piety, people were able to retain knowledge for many thousands of years and pass it on from one person to another person. And that was known as Smriti, or through memory itself. So when a spiritual master gave you instructions, the disciple would remember those instructions through Smriti, and he would pass those instructions from one person to another person. Another way was when something was written down, like the Vedas. This was written by Vyasadeva and Lord Ganesh, and these were passed on, and that's known as Shruti. These are like the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita. So these are for later on in life when we get through Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and then Kali Yuga, where the human body diminishes through intelligence, through memory. They have to study through scriptures, through revealed scriptures, and that's through Shruti itself. But that is done also through accepting a spiritual master. Okay, the fourth point I wanted to mention about the conversations between Krishna and Arjuna. As we understand in one of the last verses of the Bhagavad Gita, I'll just show this prayer to you. This is the last verse, chapter 18, verse 78. So when we actually follow the instructions of the spiritual master, we overcome all the difficulties in our life. We become completely surrendered unto Krishna. And why do we actually want to surrender unto Krishna? Obviously, as we understand, when we understand this rare form of human life, we have that high form of intelligence to understand what is right and what is wrong. Why is there so much suffering in this world? What is the cause of disease? Why is there birth, old age, disease? Who was I in my past life? Why is some people rich? Why is somebody poor? When we come through those stages of surrendering unto a spiritual master and taking that diksha, following the instructions, then there's a point in our spiritual life when, although at the beginning there is a lot of difficulties, then Krishna completely rewards you in a way that is actually saying that Krishna, I am pleased with you for your service to me. So this verse, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Parto Dhanudaraha, Tatra Shri Vijaya Bhuti, Dhruva Niti Mati Mama. The translation is, wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there is also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. That is the very last verse Sanjaya says to Dhritarashtra. So we actually understand that, when we actually surrender unto Krishna, we see him everywhere within our heart, is within and without, with ourselves. But importantly, when we actually pray to Krishna, no matter the difficulties that we face, there may be challenges always there. Within the early days of ISKCON, you can see Srila Prabhupada struggled so much to establish Krishna consciousness, but somehow or another he had complete faith in Krishna. Even though there were difficulties, uh, actually training up all the devotees in the early stages of life, the difficulties or the offenses or the mistakes they made. But Srila Prabhupada was so kind, so compassionate. He allowed those mistakes to happen, but yet he did this in his best ability. He instructed them in a way that was actually allowing them to advance in their spiritual life. And many of them, if you can imagine, they came from a background which was meat eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sex. Those those were the condition of the material way of life, and it was very difficult. But yet they had so much love for Srila Prabhupada that even though they didn't have so much devotion, they were willing to sacrifice their life. Even right now, if your spiritual master told you, okay, I want you to go to China, I want you to go to some dangerous parts of the world, preach about Krishna consciousness. Of course, the spiritual master wouldn't do anything that would endanger his disciples. His nature is to protect his devotees, but at the same time, his duty is also to carry on expanding or preaching about Krishna consciousness to everyone. Somehow or another, we always have some sort of doubts in our life. Well, I feel comfortable. The weather's very cold if I go to Russia, or it's very difficult if I go to a country where there's communism, or if there's no religion, or they may not accept Krishna consciousness. Just like recently, you may have heard that in Russia, the devotees were prosecuted just by doing Harinam on the streets. They were taken to court and prosecuted. But somehow or another, they had so much faith in Krishna, their prosecution were going to sort of lock them up in prison and tell them outlaw about uh, going out in the streets doing harinams. But somehow or another, they had a very good defensive team, and they were able to protect themselves and allowed the court to understand that no, this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, they've been doing it for many years, and they should be allowed to continue. But prior to that, they actually went to court because they were going to ban the Bhagavad Gita because they said it was a book of terrorism, it was a book of violence. But somehow or another, once again, the defense team, the spiritual defense team, explained to the court of law that no, this is a book of peace. Although sometimes you may think, well, Krishna was telling Arjuna to fight, so it's a book of violence, isn't it? Why is Krishna telling Arjuna to fight? But you have to understand the background, the history of why Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight, and that was to fight for righteousness, fight for dharma, to fight the demonic people. Krishna tried so hard to try and ensure there was some um, peace between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, even to that point where Krishna allowed uh, himself to reveal to Duryodhana his spiritual form. But even Duryodhana scoffed at Krishna. He did not believe in Krishna at all. He just had so much desire, so much ego, so much envy for Arjuna and the Pandavas that he wanted the kingdom himself. The kingdom was rightfully under the lineage of Pandu, who were the Pandavas. But unfortunately, due to a gambling match, they lost their whole kingdom, they lost their whole army, and so forth. But slowly, slowly, while they were in hiding for 14 years, they were abandoned in the forest for 14 years. They slowly developed a team of armies, and they were ready to come to an agreement. They even Yudhishthira asked for just 5 villages, would be happy for 5 villages to Duryodhana and will live peacefully. But what did Duryodhana said? He would not give even a piece of land the tip of a pin. Can you imagine that? The tip of a pin, that's almost like invisible. He was not able to give that to them. So Krishna, the ultimate resolution was that Krishna had to tell him, you have to go to war, fight for righteousness, fight for your possessions. Um, so, what's the time? I'm just conscious about the time. Oh, crikey, it's 10 to 9. Okay, so finally, the fifth point was about the point about Sanjay saying that my hair is standing on end. I'll just go to that verse again. Sanjay said, thus I have heard the conversation of the two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna. So wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. So there are many symptoms that one may have when you become a devotee of Krishna. Tears flowing from your eyes, your hair standing on end, shivering, shaking, so many symptoms. And, there's that immense flow of love that comes from one side. Because don't forget, the body itself is a material, temporary covering made of chemicals covering the soul, which by its true nature is non different from Krishna. But on a limited level, it has on all the quality level, it has all the qualities of Krishna, but on a very limited level, like a tiny drop of water compared to an ocean. So this last verse I was just going to show to you was a prayer by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he recites the Shikshastika prayers, the 8 prayers. On the sixth prayer, he recites Nayanam Kalada Shudaraya Vadanam Gadkada Rudaya Gira Pulake Nishatam Vapu Kada Davanamagrani Bhavishyati. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? When will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? So these are some of the symptoms that Lord Chaitanya, wants to experience when he's reciting the holy name of the Lord. And these are the symptoms that we should be aiming for by chanting the holy name of the Lord, by association of the devotees, by association of the spiritual master, by discussing the name, fame, glories, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have that feeling of voice choking up. Sometimes when we sing in prayers, in a bhajan, there's that feeling that we have intense desire, that love that overflows. Tears come out from your eyes naturally. Why is that? Because the name of God is non different from Krishna in terms of like quality, fame, beauty. So when you recite the holy name of the Lord, Krishna is dancing on the tip of your tongue. Krishna is revealing yourself in front of you because the name of Krishna and Krishna, the personality is non-different. So thank you so much for joining in this Srimad Bhagavatam Bhagavad Gita prayers. And as we come into the end of the year prayers, those who have participated for the last 18 chapters, I pray that a lot of revelations come to your heart, being fully surrendered unto Krishna, wanting to serve the devotees, wanting to serve Krishna himself directly, taking that opportunity to become more Krishna consciousness, becoming surrendered to a disciple or having a spiritual master if you haven't got one already. If there's any questions, by all means to speak, unmute yourself, and please, if I could answer any questions or if you have any comments or anything.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hi Krishna Jolie, how are you?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you? Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you very
Um,
much.
I've always been intrigued. Why has these conversations, when they're not meant to be confidential, because Sanjay witnessed them all. How was he allowed to witness all these conversations with Krishna and Arjuna?
Yeah, thank you, Jolie. So earlier on, I did mention that Sanjaya was a disciple of Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva was very pleased by Sanjay's servitude towards him. And because Vyasadeva is the literal incarnation of Krishna himself, so in other words, Vyasadeva had the authority to give that blessing to Sanjaya to reveal that information to Dhritarashtra himself. So you could actually say, well, Dhritarashtra was very envious. So um, why was Sanjay be able to narrate what was happening to Dhritarashtra? But ultimately, that narration took place basically for our benefit, because in one way we have an element of duryodhana within ourselves. We have a level of envy. We have a level of dhritarashtra within us as well. We have a level of blindness that we are, blind to the scriptures. So when Sanjaya revealed the Bhagavad Gita, the confidential knowledge, he revealed it to Dhritarashtra and also showed to Dhritarashtra, all this time you've been so sheltering your own son, Duryodhan. Now do you realize the mistakes you have made? You see that Krishna is not an ordinary person, he's the supreme personality of Godhead. So that confidential knowledge, although it is confidential, but ultimately those who are surrendered unto Krishna, that knowledge becomes revealed to them. And in one of the verses, it does mention that this king of knowledge is the most confidential of all knowledge, and it is Krishna revealing it to Arjuna because Arjuna is his dear friend. I hope that answers your question, Jolie, to a certain level.
Well, he must have been a special devotee because disciple, because he's had a lot of disciples, hasn't he? And he was like a go-between, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And
Yes.
if you look at read the Mahabharata, it actually tells Sanjay was having a long conversation with Dhritarashtra. Please, 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 you must listen to Krishna. I mean, although he was a spiritual king, I mean the king, but still Sanjay was his servant. But yet Sanjaya was given King Dhritarashtra instructions that it's your duty. You should go to the forest, surrender yourself. You should just abandon this big war. You should surrender unto Krishna. This is before the Bhagavad Gita took place. Sanjaya, it mentions that he was actually confronting the king about his duty as a king, as a spiritual king, and all the mistakes that Duryodhana had done. And the Pandavas, his own son, you should ask for forgiveness from the Pandavas. But because Duryodhana was Dhritarashtra was very blind and very attached to his own son, that blindness overtook his real faith and devotion to Krishna.
Yeah.
Any
Hare
other
Krishna. Yeah,
comments
it
or
put
any
some
other
light
points,
to.
Jolie?
No, that's fine because it put some light to what I was thinking. But I'm just probably thinking um, the rules and regulations. How does it fit with our world and their world?
Yeah,
Thank you. That's fine. I know the
thank you.
time is moving. Another time, maybe we can connect with other things that will complete my
Yes,
questions.
s-
Thank you, Prabhuji.
that's no problem at all, and it's really great that you ask these questions because in that verse which I mentioned, Arjuna says to Krishna, "I am confused." Sorry, I am confused about my duty and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. I am your disciple. So, to a certain degree, we have to be inquisitive, but also not be blind as well, because if you become blind and faithless, like for instance, there are so many different religions around the world. There's the Swaminarayan, there's the Krishna consciousness movement, there's the um, Brishbaspi movements, there's other sort of Bhakti Marg movement. But what is it? What makes you want to go to one group of organization and not to another group of organization? So I could go into some sort of philosophical discussion on this, but the most important thing is that there's more four main sampradayas. There's the Brahma Sampradaya, there's the Lakshmi Sampradaya, there's the four Kumara Sampradaya, and there's, of course, the Shiva Sampradaya. But the Sampradaya that we follow is the Brahma Sampradaya and Lakshmi Sampradaya. As we follow Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we follow the Gaudiya Mad Sampradaya, which is also considered to be the Sampradaya of Srimati Radharani. So somebody may say, well, how do I know your religion is right and not somebody else's? So
Mhm.
once again, that revelation has to come by studying the scriptures, by accepting a
Yeah.
spiritual master and understanding what is right and wrong. For instance, I don't know if you've had a chance to go on uh, the video that showed about Pankaj Prabhu, who passed away quite recently. So
No,
sad.
I didn't. I missed that.
Yeah. So in one of the
Do they have a recording?
yeah, they have it on YouTube. You should be able to find it. He mentions that
Okay, I'll.
before he came to ISKCON, he had a guru, and that guru was teaching him a special prayer, a prayer about revelations within the heart, the light within the heart. So that was almost similar to Brahmajyoti or impersonalism. Of
Mm.
course, this is what we are against. Of course, we do believe in the Brahma and the effulgence of the Supreme Lord, but we also believe in Bhagavan and the Super Soul, with the three aspects of the Supreme Personality of Godhead: Bhagavan, Brahman, and the Super Soul. But then he later on, when he met Srila Prabhupada and he understood Srila Prabhupada's philosophy, he was far more convinced about Srila Prabhupada's philosophy about Krishna being a supreme person, a God, a personality. So that God that you pray to, Krishna as a Murti, is non different from Krishna as long as you are following the Vajratika devotion, the level of devotion in praying to Krishna, that personality, supreme personality, reveals himself or is present within the Murti form of Krishna himself. So sometimes you may have a particular guru, but if you're not 100% sure, then you have to ask for further revelations by feeling completely surrendered unto Krishna by devotion, by prayers. And that what happens, just like Dhruva Maharaj, he prayed and prayed and prayed for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And like Lord Vishnu came himself personally. And but when he saw Lord Vishnu, he had a desire to have material opulence to become powerful, so he could, overcome the throne when he was sort of abandoned by his own father. But when he saw Vishnu, that feeling of material, um, I suppose, accumulation completely went out the window because he said, "What a fool I was! I was praying for all this material opulence, but now when I saw Vishnu himself, I didn't ask for full surrender of Krishna or Vishnu at his lotus feet." Yeah. Any other comments, points anybody would like to make? And just wanted to say thanks once again to Devika and I think it was Steffi. They spoke so well on the
Steffi, yes.
Bhagavad Gita recitation. I do pray that they do pray again to do the recitation once again. And Jolie, you should do the recitation as well if you haven't done it at all.
I do sometimes, yes,
Ah,
Prabhuji.
that's good.
I'm not good at the Sanskrit though, but I'm learning.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. Even sometimes it is nice to recite it carefully, clearly, because any particular words that you
Yeah,
say wrong may have the wrong meaning. But of course, it's the devotion which is the most important thing.
Gratitude,
yeah.
Prabhu.
Thank
That's
you,
nice.
thank you, everyone.
And the more you do it, it connects with all the explanation what you give us as well.
Yes,
So gradually we learn, about the scriptures as well because you repeat it and you hear it and you some of it you recall when you talk about other subjects.
that's right. Because
You
at the
connect. I'm
early
just
days,
thinking about what you just said about the conversation and the confidential bit with Sanjaya. I think also if he was such a good devotee, whatever he heard, Krishna intended him to learn and understand similarly as Arjuna was. So it's all his disciples. He's embedding these good knowledge and good sense of being.
yeah, sure. And of
Yeah,
course, the most important thing, Jolie, is that there is a witness who saw the Bhagavad Gita because if Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna alone without anybody there, there was no sort of recorded history of what discussions took place. So somebody could say, well, you've written a book when nobody was there as a witness. So hence Sanjaya was blessed by Vyasadeva to witness exactly every single word by Krishna as he spoke the Bhagavad Gita and by Arjuna,
mm,
and he was able to record this. And hence, when we see the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita is Dhritarashtra Vacha, he asks Sanjaya during the battle of Kurukshetra, Dharmashetra, what is happening, what is going on between the two armies as they prepare for fighting. So that witness, Sanjaya, is also our spiritual master because Sanjaya, without Sanjaya, this Bhagavad Gita, this book as it is, wouldn't have taken place.
that's right.
So we're actually very grateful to a great personality like Sanjay to be shown that revelation of you know, the whole.
So Krishna knew all about it. He's the knower, and in a way, he made it happen. I suppose. Yes.
Yes, it happened,
Hare
and
Krishna.
of course, those revelations come again in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who reveals the scriptures. Sometimes they get diminished, the saintly kings understood it in that way, but sometimes the scriptures get lost. But the spiritual Krishna himself appears millennium after millennium to bring back um, what's the verse? Sorry, just yada yada dharmasya glani bhavati bharata.
Yeah.
Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, I just send myself in order to protect, in order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the demons. I appear as myself millennium after millennium. Yeah.
Haribol. Yes.
Ah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa
Yeah.
sindhubhyaiva
Kripa
cha
sindhu devasya
patitanam pavanebhyo
patitam
vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
pavanebhyo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Thank
you. Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare
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 Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.